The Philippines placed 116th out of 180 nations and territories in Transparency International's latest Corruption Perception Index. Why do we remain at the bottom half of the list? Let's find out from Transparency International's Asia Regional Coordinator, Ulziikhuu. Thank you so much for joining us from Berlin, Germany. So Urna, what is the criteria, first of all, for the CPI to rank countries and territories by their perceived levels of public sector corruption?
Thank you for having me. Corruption Perceptions Index that we launch every year ranks 180 countries and territories around the world by the perceived levels of public corruption. We have a score from 0 to 100. When a country scores closer to 0, it means country is highly corrupt. When a country scores closer to 100, it means the country is perceived to be very clean. Corruption Perceptions Index, or CPI, as it's known, uses 13 different reputable sources to measure perceptions of public sector corruption, so that it can provide a comprehensive picture of how the situation is in a given country. This is mainly based on surveys of business people and experts. It's an indicator of corruption in the public sector.
All right. Apart from the sources that you rely on for the Corruption Perception Index, does Transparency International in any way also visit the country, experience the corruption on the ground, gather data on the ground, or is it just based on data from all of these respectable sources?
Corruption Perceptions Index itself is a product that is based on desk research, compiling all these 13 indexes. But of course, this does not capture wholly the situation in the country. It's complemented by different surveys and research work we conduct at Transparency International. One of them is called Global Corruption Barometer. It's a household survey to understand experiences of people, whether they encountered corruption cases in their day-to-day lives. So these are the Corruption Perception Index is complemented by different research work we do, and that includes visiting the country, of course, the Philippines.
So Urna, you mentioned the Philippines. Let's zero in on our country. And it remains among the significant decliners among Asia-Pacific countries. And we are at 116th out of 180 nations. Why are we so low on the index? Is it because of lack of transparency, accountability, and good governance?
Yes, precisely so. A lot of the decliners we see in the Asia-Pacific region, we observe a decline in terms of democracy and rule of law, especially in the Philippines. The country really suffers from entrenched patronage, as well as cumbersome regulations, excessive red tape that might result in high-level bureaucratic corruption. This affects, of course, citizens and business alike. And CPI itself is rely on expert opinions and opinions of business people.
And Urna, is this data based from reports and sources of the previous administration of President Duterte or the current government of President Marcos Jr., or a combination of both?
So Corruption Perceptions Index, particularly the one that was launched 2 days ago, measures the situation from 2022. So the government that is in power in 2022, different anti-corruption efforts that were made by the government would be included in this index. So we cannot go back to a previous government, although if you look at the historical data since 2018, we can see Philippines has been declining in terms of its CPI scoring. If the country has its lowest score at 33. It's the second year in a consecutive 2 years, 2021 and 2022.
So Urna, just looking at the numbers, what are the trends showing? Are we going to decline even further, or is there any sign that there could be some kind of improvement in the corruption? Or is the corruption so well entrenched that it cannot be changed?
Well, there's a positive trend specifically in Asia-Pacific region. We can see that a global average is at 43 points out of 100. But in the Asia-Pacific region, we have a regional average of 45. We can definitely see that governments have made commitments to combat corruption, and they've done a great job to reduce petty corruption. But grand corruption, systematic corruption, the ones that we don't see much on the records, really undermine the progress towards corruption-free country in many of the countries in the region. And of course, corruption thrives as politicians make empty promises to combat it.
Thank you so much for sharing with us the views of Transparency International Asia Regional Coordinator Urna Ulziikhuu, joining us from Berlin, Germany.